I used to work night shift at a nursing home. I had just started doing my nightly pickup of laundry outside the rooms, where they leave their laundry bags. There was a man, I'll call him Chuck, and he was a resident there. He hated having his laundry outside his door because he always thought he wouldn't get his clothing back. After reassuring him for the uptenth time, he finally let me take it. So this particular night started off pretty strange. Lights flickered, and residents seemed uneasy, fitful, sleeping, and walking around aimlessly. We tried getting everyone into their rooms and getting them into bed. I did notice Chuck wasn't out, but then again, he wasn't the social type, so I brushed it off. As I'm doing my rounds, I see Chuck dressed and standing at the end of the hallway where his room is. I say to him, "Chuck, why are you dressed and out of bed? It's late." He turns towards his room and goes in. I finish with that end of the hall and start walking towards Chuck's room. As I approach, the lights in the hallway go out. I take my cell phone and turn on the flashlight. Chuck is standing on the other end of the hall that I had just left from. Confused, I say, "Chuck, how did you do that?" He walks towards the game room and goes behind a wall, and so I lose sight of him. I call my supervisor and let her know that Chuck's walking around in the dark and that I'm too scared to follow him alone, as I request that she send security to help me find him. Security shows up and we go into the game room. When we enter it, there are no signs of Chuck. Security asks if I'm sure I saw him, and I say I'm absolutely sure. We go back to his room. At this time, I'm simply dumbfounded as to how this is even happening. We enter his room and Chuck has died. No alarms went off on his monitor, nothing to alert us that he was in distress. The clothes I saw him in were in a bag with a note on the top that said I couldn't take them with me. I still get chills when I tell this story. I have worked as a hospice nurse at a hospital. Once, they sent me to this old hospital about 30 miles from where I used to live at the time. It was clean, but looked like it just had stepped back into the 1950s. It was in a farming community, and this hospital had also at one time delivered babies. My patient was passing late one night, and I got there about 3 a.m. As I was walking to her room, I saw an older man with overalls and a plaid shirt on, looking like he was lost. I asked him if I could help him, but he turned his back and just dissolved into thin air. It scared the holy heck out of me. When I got to the nursing station, one of the nurses saw that I was deadly pale. She started laughing and yelled at the other girls that I had seen old Henry. They all laughed and told me his tale of when he was still alive. His daughter had gone into labor, but things went wrong and her and the baby died. When they called her father, Henry, he got into such a hurry to get to the hospital that he had a car wreck and him and his wife were also killed. They told me that everyone sees him, but it's usually before someone passes away. The nurse then showed me a baby doll that they used to put into the room that is now abandoned, which was the delivery room the girl died in. She said for some reason they won't see him for a while when they put the baby out. That was all so sad, to have your soul stuck on earth looking for his dead daughter and grandbaby. And sure enough, my little patient passed away at 8 a.m. So once again, Henry was right about showing up before someone passed. I worked at a nursing home about 8 years ago. I came in for my shift and was informed during the report that a resident on hospice care would most likely be passing away during my shift. I was not on her floor, but on the floor across to hers, so there were 2 other girls who would be working with her that were both newly hired. I was told the resident was afraid of dying and did not want to be alone. She had expressed this extensively to the staff. Her son had been with her all day, but that evening he went to get some dinner. During his absence, I saw one of the new girls running up the hall in distress. "Something's wrong with MJ," she said, speaking of the resident. I replied in my most calm manner to explain what was going on, as I followed her to MJ's room. "She isn't responding, or her head is tipped to the side. She's got something coming out of her mouth," she exclaimed. Sure enough, MJ was sitting upright, her head cocked to the side, and her chest rose and fell laboriously like a fish out of the water. I went and stood behind her, cradling her head next to mine, and wrapped my arms around her. Both girls were scared and speaking loudly. "She's dying," they exclaimed. I shushed them and said everything was gonna be alright. I asked them to go get some supplies so we could get MJ comfortable, mostly to just get them out of the room. I knew I had to be the rock, the one to call up order in chaos. I knew MJ was close to drawing her last breath, and I knew she was terrified of being alone. I held her in my arms and I sang to her softly. I told her that everything would be alright. I said it over and over again until I could no longer feel her chest rise and fall. It was just MJ and I in that room, and now I was alone with a vessel that had once held her spirit. When the girls returned with clean linens, we carefully changed MJ, and the three of us worked together to lift her into her bed. I remember the off feeling of holding her lifeless body, her slack limbs, and how the muscle no longer supported any joints. I felt I could not allow her head to fall backward, that even in death, it was vital to keep her head supported. Her son had returned and was waiting outside the room. I knew I had to prepare her perfectly. The memory of seeing your dead loved one is a core memory you will never forget. No one ever wants to see their loved one's lifeless body. That is never ever anything anyone would want to experience. I had to ensure that the standard moment was portrayed with as much dignity as possible. I combed her hair, pulled the sheets up, and made sure there weren't any wrinkles in the bedding. I rested her hands on her chest and used a damp washcloth to close her eyes. When I was sure MJ looked as peaceful as possible, I opened up the door and allowed him in to begin his grieving process. I have never held someone as they transitioned from one life to the next. As sad as it was, I'm so glad that I could be there with her, that I could comfort her, help her let go, and know that she was being cared for. I felt a deep feeling in my own heart that I had done something good. I had shared with someone something that no other person was able to do in that moment. I'd held her while she died. I went to bed that night with a feeling of peace. At some point during the night, I began to dream, and I want to say it was early morning when I felt the presence. The vision in my dream was a chamber of light, gold flecks, and taking on no shape recognizable. I knew it was her. I could feel her warmth and light and happiness like laughter. Her presence stood beside the head of my bed. She had been there all along, but now I could see her golden aura.